Jan Cavelle. Wow, I love talking to Jan. It was great. Entrepreneur, business owner. She's a single mother, found herself being a single mother, started making phone calls, got on assistance and eventually made a furniture business, had two factories, had uh, a lot of employees. Just fascinating how she was able to turn it around in a completely male dominated environment. uh, Men would come to her and say, "Well, you wouldn't have this problem if you were a man." And we talk about that. We also talk about, which I love to talk about in entrepreneurship and business owning, is the difference between management and leadership, and the problems with delegation with owners. We talk a lot about that in sales, just the negative connectivity with sales. Great insight. She is now retired. She wrote a great book, Grow to Scale. Excuse me, Scale for Success, and she talks about how to grow and how to scale your business. She interviews entrepreneurs. Really, wonderful conversation with Jan. Just very insightful. She's now writing another book. I look forward to talking to her again, but you're really going to enjoy this conversation. She's British. She's from the United Kingdom, and her view on discipline extremely unique. I've never heard it before. I'll tease with this. Pink Floyd was introduced. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Appreciate Jan Cavell. What a pleasure. Why should, or why would anybody want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, that is a very good question. I think there's two types of people who want to be an entrepreneur. There's the people who are very driven to make a life of them for
Mm.
themselves and have what they think is going to be freedom, which is going to be a dubious concept. And the choices to decide who are they going to work with and where are they going to go to with their lives, all those things. So for all those reasons, I think, for a long time, people have liked the idea of being an entrepreneur. Some people want to get rich, but I don't think that really works as a sole motivation. But however, the actual freedom of lifestyle is a big thing. I think now, I don't know if you find this, but I think now it's become a high fashion
Mm.
thing. And many people are getting into fairly dire straits because the realities of entrepreneurship are coming as a bit of a shock. That actually, it's great if you're made that way, but it's also a tough one if you don't like it. It's a case of what's that old saying? All that
Mm.
glitters isn't gold.
Yeah, you talk about statistics. Just marriage, for example. Statistics are 50%. Businesses fail within I'm first year. You tell a great story about how you had a great business factory, furniture, and you had a picnic with all your employees, and they brought their children, and all of a sudden you started feeling this pressure. It's like, oh my goodness, if my business fails, it's not just me and these people, but it's all their families.
Wow, I didn't realize you'd had that. Yeah, it was. I will never forget that day. It was organized at some local lakes, and as you say, all their kids were there. And I'd been conscious that the number of people working for me had grown. But when you saw, of course, twice families and three or four kids each, and some of them had brought a sister or a brother and their families, and I was like, see, I can't be responsible for all this. This is like a sort of mini country. I just wow. Really terrifying.
Yeah, when I first started my business, I'm in the tech industry in the '90s, and struggling for the first year, and is a good time to start because I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have a house, I didn't have a car, I got out of school. It was a good time to take some risks. But I remember my friends saying, it must be so great not having a boss, and I would always say, I've got more bosses now than I've ever had.
Yeah,
Each one of my clients is a boss of mine, and if I tell them to go, shove off, I lose them. So,
yeah.
what is the one book where it talks about entrepreneur brain damage? I think it's the E Myth. We all the entrepreneurs have,
Could well
yeah,
be.
have
Yeah,
kind of brain.
Michael Gerber.
That's right, Michael Gerber.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as simple as having no boss at
Right.
all, is it? I mean, the multitude of bosses, and you have some lovely
Yes.
bosses, and then you have some less than lovely bosses, and as you say, you can't sort of suddenly start telling clients where to go, and you've got bills to pay.
And the added, and it's not just the clients, it's the employees, it's the vendors, it's the banks, it's the partners. I mean, there's just, I don't know. Whenever somebody tries to, ask my advice about starting a business, I say, just have a plan, but just be very careful. It's almost like golf. When people ask me to start playing golf, I say, don't do it, because you'll get upset and you'll have a good day. Then you won't be able to sleep one night because you missed a putt, and then you'll be blaming me. It's almost similar to entrepreneurship. It could be so frustrating. It could be rewarding as well, and there are wins. But now you had the added benefit, of course, of being a woman, where you tell another story about how male dominated. You're in the UK. For those maybe listening, you think Jan's from New Jersey. She is not. She's from the United Kingdom, and where
My Boston grandmother, if you're getting twangs of New Jersey.
where you actually had a male come into your factory and say you should run this like a man.
I had several, seriously. Yeah, I mean, whenever I would ask a male sort of business advisor or old school consultant or whatever, they would all immediately go, "Well, obviously you wouldn't be having these problems if you weren't a woman." And I think, for first couple of times I've sorry. But actually, I think what they were meaning, they were sort of past that point of insulting me, if you like. But what they were meaning is the setup of old school manufacturing in the
Uh,
UK, in a country, countryish town, sprawling, small, large town, was so unionized, so very male dominated. The women did tend to, if they went out to work, it was for some extra money. If they weren't career women, and the men ruled the home, and it was very much that sort of male dominated society. And a female boss was just completely anathema, and I didn't really give it any thought when
mm,
I started. I mean, I was doing this business and trying to make a go of it, and it was only as we grew that, of course, that clique took hold, and I'd start realizing what was going on. We'd have TV cameras in, and of course I'd noticed, which I was just blind to. I didn't know because
Mm.
I was used to it. Of course, the walls were covered in porn, and it was coming up on the local news, and I was thinking, oh, bother, that's not a very good impression. And the guys would go on about, oh, her indoors, come here to get away from women, and that was how it was. So I guess, to some extent, people had a point that there was an issue about me being a woman. It was going to be much harder with some of them.
But what's extraordinary about you, Jan, is that you're a single mom. You start a business. You become one of the first 50 female entrepreneurs to represent Europe. You won an award. I mean, remarkable. I mean, tell us how you started and why you did it.
Why
Mm,
is easy, in that, I've, as you rightly say, I found myself a single mom, messy divorce, absolutely zero money. I was on
mhm,
government support, and I didn't want to stay there all through the kids' life. I wanted to make a future for them, and so I went and saw the local security office, the social security office, and I said, look, you can either go on supporting us for the next whatever it is, 15 years, because the kids were very small, or you can support me for a little while I try and get a business off the ground. And they were more flexible in those days. I don't think you get
hmm.
away with it now. But they said, okay, we'll give it a go. And that's exactly what I did. And so there I was, had the children very small. I had a little shelf under the stairs in my tiny cottage and a telephone because it was all pre-computer days. And I started buying in stuff to sell and phoning people. I had some experience of telephone sales, so that seemed a way to go, and I could fit it around the kids, and I would put the answer phone on and take them to park, and then it would be, mummy's got to work time, so amuse yourselves, or play school or whatever. And so I sort of juggled it like that, which was okay actually, and because the kids were so small, they didn't
Mm.
find it odd. It's funny, we grow up, don't we? And we accept what is normal at home when you're that small. So they were terribly good about it. Um, so I was very lucky on that score. And with it's rather like you, it took the first year or so to to survive much more than the odd night of, it's not
Mm.
going to work, I've got to give it up. Um, but it happened, and very slowly it began to grow, um, which I did not expect. I didn't know what I was doing. For I never know to whether to say don't do as I do, and that's certainly the case in
Mm.
certain things, or if I can do it, so can you, because there's an element of truth in both of those statements. I had absolutely zero knowledge of
Mm.
business at that point. I really didn't. I was so ignorant. Um, and I've just really had the telephone sales and a stubborn tenacity that somehow I was going to feed the children.
And you said you received a lot of bad advice.
Don't think at that stage I received any particular advice because I didn't really see anybody. I mean, my time was split between the phone and the
Mm.
children. Um, it took a long time. I mean, that gradually developed into a tiny sort of farm unit and two people working for me, before it got to the factory stage and things. And it was really as things got bigger, and by which time I had maybe even at two factories at that point. And I started networking as you do when businesses grow, and started meeting other local business people who weren't always necessarily very entrepreneurial. I think, sort of local business is not really
Mm.
necessarily the same as fast growth business anyway. And again, it's still your time where, women weren't supposed to be floating around running businesses. So, in fact, I'll tell you another story about that if
Please.
you like, which will horrify you. I went thinking I'll do my bit. I went to a local business meeting, to discuss for town. And, I was joining the sort of club of business people and trying to contribute. And I turned up, and there was about 8 of us there, only woman, no surprise there. So I sat and I listened to what was going on, and there were various stories which I had to catch up on, as you would with any of those things. And they were talking about Tesco's, the supermarket, coming to the town about halfway through this meeting. And eventually, the man next door to me turned round and he patted me on the arm and he said, there, that's something you must know about Tesco's.
Wow.
I thought, whoa. And at the end of it, the same man came up to me and he said, did you manage to understand any of that?
Wow.
I thought,
Wow.
it's bizarre. You know, and just how they can be that mind blocked that somebody could only think about going grocery shopping and not understand a business meeting, yet be running a business with 40 or 50 people or working for them. I suppose they assume that somewhere in the background there was a man doing it.
Take a breath from that. A sigh, more like it. And these sales calls that you were doing, so you
Mm.
knew a friend that did interior design, and they needed some custom furniture built,
Yeah, I mean, I got to know a few people vaguely, or names of mainly, of interior design through my sister was vaguely in it and my ex-husband. And so I had some, names and addresses, and I'd go out and I'd buy, when I got my social security check, I'd buy my treat was a trade directory, telephone directory every week till I slowly accumulated an entire set over the years of
wow.
Great Britain. Um, so, literally looking up interior designers under Yellow Pages.
Wow.
Um,
You were investing in your business even then. You knew to do that.
yeah, I mean, well, I knew I needed the phone numbers, and but being
Right.
pre-computer, there was no other way of doing it other than spending, I think the equivalent of, sort of $5 or whatever extravagant investment it was a week on getting that phone directory.
And let's talk about sales. How do we teach people who are not in sales, or should I say who don't think they're in sales, uh, to be more salesperson? You know, they think it's dirty. The
They
old
do.
used car sales, and they think it's dirty. They think, well, I'm trying to sell them stuff they don't need, or they put all this. Have a discussion just recently with somebody about that. How do we without sales you can't grow. There's no revenue.
Absolutely right. I mean, why they don't understand that, that's a stumbling block. I think I usually, because I used to do a bit of sales teaching even
Hmm.
outside the business, and I think there are various blocks to it. One of it is they decide that their product is so great that people will
Hmm.
automatically buy, particularly new people in business. Suddenly they've got this fantastic idea that they are so blown away by that clearly there's going to be queues down the street for people wanting it. So I think that's how they square it in their minds. But you're so right. People do think of it as dirty, pushy is the other word that comes up a lot. Oh, sorry, I should have turned off my emails. I hope that didn't ping your word. But yeah, I think there's this. I don't want anything to do with being that sort of person who is a bad person. And yet sales changed. I mean, as I said to you, I'd had some experience of sales prior to my marriage, and that was the real hard phone job. You if you were lucky, you got a desk. I had jobs where I had to sit on the floor doing it, and you got a list and a phone, and got told to either make appointments for people or actually try and sell something. And the amount of rejection, I mean, you did succeed if you wanted to keep your job, but it was you got a lot of abuse and a lot of rejection too. That was hard sales. Um, But no, nobody expects you to be able to do that now. You wouldn't get anywhere if you
Right.
did. It's collaborative now, I think is the best word I can describe it. I don't know what you think. I think that's where we've got to.
Yeah, especially now you were more business to business. You were B2B, you were selling, but those earlier
Mhm.
jobs you were selling to consumers, to people.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, things like I remember long term for me. I never stayed in any job very long, but I was selling wine, so that was certainly business to consumer.
I see. That's wine is very interesting. That it's a matter of taste. It's a matter of that's a very interesting angle. See, I believe everybody's in sales, so automatically my sales head just went on. When you said wine, I'm starting to think, okay, how can we arrange that? Who's the that's just the way I think, and I don't, you know, I have people tell me, yeah, be careful of Joe. He's in sales. I say, look, I own my business. Everybody, I have to have this kind of discussion, But again, there's dirty connotations to it.
Mm. That's really interesting that you get it so much because I thought, on the whole, Americans much better than us Brits about accepting
Mm,
sales. So it's interesting that you still get that. But yeah, I think it's an asset. I always have thought it was an asset. It was part my only asset actually. When I started, and I'd have been absolutely up a gum tree if I couldn't
that's right.
sell. It was the one thing that was a real strength through ups and downs. Sometimes business went well, sometimes it didn't, but I could
Mm.
always sell.
Yeah, and it's very different from business to business because the person you're talking to, it's not necessarily their money, but it's their company's money, but they still have responsibility for it. Whereas consumer is just a little bit of a different. Again, I'm putting on my sales. This is the way, this is the way I view it. All my business is B2B, uh, so that's the way I look at it. But whoever's listening, if you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, you think about starting a business, you have to look at sales as necessary. It's the worst thing will happen. They won't get your stuff. They won't get your service, and marketing goes right along with it.
Mm, absolutely, or even marketing if you're going to be trendy now.
Yeah, that's
But yeah, no, I think so, and I think you know to say so, you can be genuine and sell. You don't have to tell a pack of lies to
mm,
sell something. You can actually tell somebody the truth. And if you go on that theory of selling and being truthful, when you're talking starting up a business, you're talking projecting your vision to others in a positive way. That's selling, but you're not going to tell anybody a
mm.
pack of lies because that's going to be seen through. You're not going to carry new people around you, investors or staff or whatever, with a load of lies. It's got to be a really exciting, compelling vision, but you've got to project it right, and that's a sales skill.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then you talked about one of your stories about how you had a management team and some of your employees, and a lot of them were just wrong. Talks about the
Mm.
lessons that you learned about hiring and firing.
I mean, yeah, lots. And a lot of them only way too late.
Mm,
But I think one of the mistakes that I know I made, and I think other people, having talked to them, often make, is that when you have a startup, you start with a group of people who buy in. You're all having fun. It's great, vibes. It's great energy, and it's your place, and everybody's involved. And as you grow, you get more people. Those people who were originally there are obviously the ones you want to look after most, pay most, be managers, uh, but they're not necessarily
right.
managers to start with. And I think I've seen that go wrong so many times, and it's definitely what happened to me. And it's like saying somebody's a brilliant programmer, and they've been with you from the start and they're responsible for your success, but it doesn't mean to say they can run the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a big
It
one.
is, and your book Scaling Up, we'll talk about that. Just comes right into that point. As you're growing, the people that kind of founded with you, that kind of brought up, aren't necessarily the ones that are going to scale. One of the big topics that I love to discuss with business owners is the difference between a manager and a leader. I had plenty of
Mm,
managers
that's a
who are
good one.
leaders, and I had leaders that thought they were managers, and vice versa. What do you feel is the difference?
I think, well, I think, I hope there should be less managers in the
Mm,
world, and I hope that actually remote working might have killed off the odd
hmm.
manager here and there, because I think a leader has to bring people with them, and with their power and their caring for those people and investing in those people. A manager is about control, and that to me is the difference. What
That's
do you
interesting.
think?
Control. Yeah, when I think manager, I think we have these goals, we have these milestones. Are we meeting them? If we're not, what we have to do to get straight. We have this quarter, we're here to meet them. Just kind of goal setting, review day to day. Whereas a leader is more visionary, more thought
Mm,
forward.
I guess I've got such a horror of micromanagers.
Ah,
But yeah, I mean, I think you're right, but I think, yeah, maybe that's really interesting. I think perhaps leaders do let go of the figures and the facts and seep it down into managers. But I'm still not sure managers should be let loose on other people.
it's fascinating. Yeah, you're combining a manager and a micromanager. Yeah, micromanager gets down. You're brushing your teeth wrong.
I know I
Yeah,
am.
yeah. You're not. That's very interesting because you've had bad experiences there, and I have had that as well. Where you should keep your pens to the right of your desk. That kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And you will CC every single email, including your personal ones.
Yeah, yeah. There's no room for that. I would think that that definitely could be frustrating. I never thought about that relationship between a manager and I always thought of a micromanager as not actually a manager, just somebody who's a bit anal retentive, perhaps.
Well, I think they're definitely that as well. But I have seen managers who are, I think they're probably fairly bad managers who are trying to make themselves feel
Mm,
better and retain a bit of control by doing the micromanaging bit. Somebody said to me the other day that they're actually, a bit of them is trying to move back to their old job where they were happy and capable. So, I mean, maybe it's that. Um, but whatever it is, they're terribly
it's
bad for the people around.
yeah. If you have to report to a micromanager, that would be pretty hellish. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, the other big thing I see a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners don't do correctly, and that's delegation. I guess that goes right along with micromanaging.
it's tough. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, there's an element of, I don't know how successful I always was. I think I seesawed on
Mm,
this one. I either did too much or too little, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. I don't know. But I think there's an element that it's very hard to let go of your baby,
mm.
always, of course. And an element of you know it better than anybody else, so surely you're going to do it better. So why on earth aren't they doing it your way? Which, of course, you can't grow a business
You
like that.
can't.
But I think both of those contribute a little bit to bad behaviour and bad managers.
I agree. I knew somebody, a colleague, who insisted on ordering the pizza for lunch. I said, so I mean,
Oh wow, that is bad. No,
I said, look, somebody could do that. What is it the 70-30 rule or the 80-20 rule? If you can get somebody to do it 80% the way you can, delegate it away, try to come up with something like that.
yeah, that. Like I say, it's as bad a one as I've ever heard. Insisting on ordering a pizza. I'm sure I didn't get that bad.
Your book, you have the book, of course, Scale for Success. I mean, on top of everything that you are, Jan, you're also an author. Tell us the story. The story is great
Oh,
how they
yes.
came to you about the writing the book.
Well, I'd been writing when I had the business. I started writing for a magazine over here. Well, I guess because it's digital, it probably seeps over there too, called Real Business. And it was something I'd always dreamed of doing. And I saw an ad, as you do by chance, saying, "Are there two entrepreneurs out there who'd like to contribute?" And I thought, nothing lost. Which is advice I'd give to anybody. You always try. So I banged off a sample article. To my amazement, they said yes, and I wrote them for about 10 years. And so I decided to retire, as you've noticed, I lasted literally a matter of
Really?
a few weeks, and I thought, now what? I'm A, bored, but B, what do I miss? And I'd got to the stage where I did not miss having a business. I'd had it. Um, but I did miss writing, and I missed the whole entrepreneurship scene, the whole entrepreneurship vibe. And I also was very interested in learning more because, as I say, when I set out, I knew absolutely zero, and I'd learned quite a lot, I hope, in my later years. And I'd become really hooked on it. I just wanted to soak up more and more. So yeah, so I put the whole thing. I went back to Real Business, and I said to my then editor, who's lovely, he's left now, but and I said, well, it's me. I don't have a business anymore. Can I still write, please? And he said, yeah, why? Thinking clearly the woman's got mad. So I went on writing for them. And then I thought, I've always dreamed of a book. And by chance, again, a bit sort of dream worthy, I put in a submission to Bloomsbury Publishing. They said, yeah, okay, come and see us. And I went, what? Again, didn't tell anybody because it was too dream worthy. I just drove up to London one day and sat outside their offices thinking, this isn't real, is it? Was invited in and offered a
Wow.
contract. So yeah. Um, so yeah, I wrote that one for them, and that came out just as the pandemic hit, which
Mm.
wasn't brilliant. And I've got another one coming out in January. So I am now a serial author. Can you be a serial author?
Congratulations. What is the North Star
Thank you.
approach?
The North Star approach, I think you're talking about particularly one of the entrepreneurs in Scale for Success, which is Darrell, who is just one of the most genuine, passionate people I've had the privilege of talking to. And he was talking about the North Star approach and truly finding. I forget now. You're putting me on the spot here. I've been so immersed in this next book, but exactly how he does it. So I shall go and find it and reread it tonight. But he was talking about how you find your true meaning and what you really want out of life and what rings true to you. And I know how he does it. It's come back to me. It came from him being at Stanford, and very early on, I think in one of his first tutorials, he was asked to list the things that bothered him in life. And he tells this story that, you know, he started off and he was sick of the food in the campus store food, cafeteria, and he was fed up with the weather, and his shoelaces had broken, and like we all do, we get terribly involved, don't we, in the dross of whatever's wound us up
Mm.
this morning. And it took him till about 67, I think, if my memory serves me right, to go, actually, poverty and injustice and things like that
Mm.
bother me. And suddenly he thought that's what matters. And from that, he built his North Star, which he built his later business on.
Yeah, it's a great story. That and these are this is success stories. And when you read about great entrepreneurs like yourself and like him and others that are successful, this is what attracts people. This is what, even though the statistics are what they are, and you know, uh, you're staying up late, You don't know if you're going to make payroll. You don't know if you're going.
Yeah, I
You
do.
you did the same. I've almost 30 years. We've never missed a payroll. Very, very fortunate. Very, very fortunate. But there's some close calls there, Jan. There's some
Oh
close
yeah,
calls, and like that picnic that you had with, this is the family. It's not just myself. It's affecting all these families. Um, it's very, very difficult, and businesses often, the entrepreneur in scale up, they are the ones that are in the way of growing, of scaling up. Often they're the problem.
very true. Yeah, I mean it is hard. I think in scale for success. The next one is slightly different. I go from the beginning because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs want to get it right from the start. But particularly, I find scale from success came very much as a concept from my own experiences with growing a business. And it's very easy to get involved in all the firefighting and the
Mm,
excitement, and you think, I'm going to grow this, and this is great. And if I grow it, it'll get bigger, and that'll be great. And if I grow it and it gets bigger, I'll make more money, and that'll be great. And all of a sudden, you've got this unwieldy thing that is chaotic and very lacking in discipline. And but life has become a sheer murderous misery. You're not enjoying it anymore, and you're stuck. There's another entrepreneur in the book that calls for sort of leap between 1 and 10 million turnover, the death valley of businesses. And I think that's such a good description because businesses just get stuck there
mm,
as well. And we talk about those startup failures, but we don't talk as much about that failure at that point. And you see businesses going yo-yoing. I've got friends who are still doing it, and saying they're going to get out, and they're still, oh, but it's better this week or it's better this year, and then it won't be the year after, and they just can't get over that hummock of that first leap in scaling. So
very true.
yeah, that was it's
It
tough.
is tough. It is tough, and I'm glad you're writing again because you're very good at it, and I look forward to talking with
Thank
you
you.
again. So you mentioned discipline. And on the podcast we talk a lot about it. I lost a lot of weight. When I started my business,
I Your weight, I have to say, is just awesome. Your weight loss is
Thank you.
amazing.
You start in the business and you're not paying attention to yourself. Like you said, I was making calls. This is in the 90s. We didn't have the World Wide Web. So I was making those calls. I had the phone in my hand and I'm trying to get appointments and not paying attention to my body, not taking care of myself. I blew up. Doctor said, you're not going to see your daughter graduates after I had a baby. And that's all I had to hear, that is. And so I lost a lot of weight. And people ask me, how'd you do it? And I just said, I always say discipline. So I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Jan.
I mean, I was so thrilled to be coming on this podcast because it really sparked so many thought processes, and I was thinking, what exactly has the effect of discipline
Hmm.
been for me? Because like many entrepreneurs, actually, I mean, the mere suggestion of discipline, makes me want to go the other
Hmm.
way. So many of us dropped out of school, or at least didn't do very well at school, and have trouble with authority generally, and are just want to do our own thing. So in theory, discipline sounds absolute
Wow.
anathema to us, and yet, if we want something badly enough and it's our business, we are not only disciplined about it, but we have that tendency to take it to extremes that are not necessarily
Hmm.
very good to us. We are so disciplined, like you were saying. We're focused only on the business. We don't look after ourselves. We abuse our bodies and do all these things wrong because we're so disciplined. We're going to do that business. It's a curious anomaly, isn't it?
Yeah, I love what you said when you first heard discipline. It was a turnoff. Can you explain why?
Oh, I think I was just one of those children who, you know, tell me to do one thing and I do the other,
I see.
and I don't think I've changed very much.
So in your academics in school, you would hear this.
Oh, everywhere. I mean, but it applied in my
Oh,
home
I
as
see.
well, you know. So yeah, I mean, I got to work with it. I mean, I read copiously, hence ending up being a writer, I think. But so I would read, books of probably a bit advanced to my years, but of any sort of rebellion. I've read a lot of American literature actually, but sort of it always was Joe from Joe's Boys, because she wanted to do her own thing and be different, and it was never one of the nice girls who did what they were
Hmm.
told. So yeah, I think, and we've got a lot of dyslexic entrepreneurs who struggle at school, for
Mm.
example. And I think in lots of ways, entrepreneurs don't take very kindly. They want freedom of doing their own thing. It's one of the reasons they go into entrepreneurship.
When you
But self-discipline, different.
very different. Yeah, when you first said you were turned off by
Yeah.
discipline, I thought of academics, and all of a sudden in my head I heard, "Hey teachers, leave those kids alone." I don't know why that Pink Floyd.
Oh, quite right
Yeah,
too.
it came right up. Uh, but yeah, so when you found yourself as a single mother and you're making these calls, I just have this vision in my head, Jan, of you putting the kids, say, okay, you got to take care of yourself now. I'm going to make some calls, and you're opening up the books and making calls. Did you think at that point, did you say, okay, now discipline sets in. Now I've got to get straight?
I gave myself
Hmm.
quotas. Certainly, I had a certain number of calls to make a day, and that was part of
Wow.
my bargain with myself. Because you know what it's like with sales. You can go on bashing your head against a brick wall almost indefinitely, but the breakthrough will come at some point. So yeah. I mean, I had a very strict routine and a regime of X number of sales calls. But apart from a very off day, I didn't find that too much of a problem. I often think, looking back, it I'd have looked in from the outside and thought that was
Hmm.
so tough. How did you do that? But it didn't actually
Right.
feel like it very much because it was worth it.
Yeah, you were in the moment. Sales is a numbers game, and you're going to get shot
Mm,
down 100 times, but you'll make that one sale and make up for everyone, and it's not for the
yeah.
thin skinned. It's not. I was just at a retail store here, and there's people right in the aisles trying to sell you whatever, and it's a numbers game. I say, I'm not interested, but have a great day. You're always polite, of course, and they smile and they realize that they're going to get a lot of no's, but those one or two yeses for the day makes their quota, and it's uh it's not easy at all. So when you first heard, we're coming on the podcast with about discipline, did you think was it? Have you ever before thought I'm a disciplined person or I'm not? Did you? How did it? I wonder how it resonated with you.
Like I said, it prompted me to
Mm,
think a lot because my first instinct was, I've never liked discipline. I
right.
don't like authority figures. I certainly when I was younger and during my entrepreneurship days, I drank too much and certainly my weight gained, similar
Yes.
story. And so, that lack of self-discipline, because that's not where my focus was, and I didn't really care
Mm,
enough, I guess. So yeah, at first I thought discipline's not discipline. It is not me, and then I thought actually discipline is me if I want something badly enough. So there's this convergence between self-discipline and
mm,
authority, which is a different thing altogether. But I think it's tough for entrepreneurs because we're such all or
right.
nothing people, you know, and so we tend to be over disciplined and overdo it, or not do it at all. Getting that middle sensible one is not the easy one for us.
I wonder if some of those, male counterparts that you had to kind of endure, perhaps it's not discipline that they should have exercised in their chauvinistic mentality, but it's something along those lines, and hopefully it's getting better.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I don't. I hope it is too. I mean, it was a very bad time
Right.
for it. It really was that sort of 50-year out of date mentality. And I hope it's getting better there. But I wouldn't, by choice, live in a place like that ever again. So I don't know. But I think things have to change. I think we're encouraging a lot more choice of people, male and female, being and everything else, around that, being allowed to live lives how they want to. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's way past the day of get a job and be miserable for
Mm.
the rest of your life.
Yeah, as a father of daughters, I certainly hope that's
Wow.
the case.
Good luck.
Yes. As adult daughters, young adults daughters, yes. Jan Cavell, what motivates you?
I love what
Mm,
I do, actually. That's why I went back to it. And I find I love talking to the entrepreneurs that I do. It's such a privilege. They fascinate me. I admire them, and I learn from them. Quite why I want to learn so badly. It's not as if I'm going to apply it now, but it stimulates me, and I just love it.
and how do you measure success?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? And as you know, it's a question I asked
Yeah.
everybody in the scale for success. I think for me, it's definitely not financial, as many people said in that book, and I think they were
Mm,
telling the truth. Actually, I mean, I know it's oh gosh, I wouldn't dream of being motivated by money, but actually, I don't think it is. I think it's taking money off a table so you're not worried about not having a roof over your head or feeding your children or all those essential things. But I think it's okay to not be madly motivated by money. I to me, it's being having the freedom to do what I do now,
mm.
which I love. That's pretty successful to me.
Yeah, and I think it goes right along with what motivates you. And how they answered,
Mm.
I wondered if you asked them now if they would be, I don't think there's a right answer at any time. I think it could change within day, minute, hour, week. I mean, things change, priorities change.
That's such a good point, I think. There's a few people who were so focused they knew from the start where they wanted to be, but they've had to. I'm thinking of particularly a man called Rob Hamilton in the book who built his business up, very very focused for a set period of time for a colossal sale, very successful, and all exactly going according to plan. But I mean, okay, he got his colossal sale, but I'm sure he's had to
Mm,
reinvent himself behind the scenes. I mean, he's a lovely guy, he's an angel investor and involved in a lot of things. But that must have taken, as you say, a different sort of mindset to think, what is success now? And I know it's also spending time with his family, but yeah, you're so right. It does change as we go through life. And health, of course, matters more as we get older.
certainly. And you have to be careful what you wish for.
We
Because
do.
if you get it, what do you do now? I'm sure,
Yeah.
if I get this one client, everything is going to change, and then you get it. And then like, my goodness, how are we going to do this?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. And I think the people like us who are, essentially
Yeah.
salespeople, are always motivated to get the sale. And we don't always stop to think, can we deliver? And it's a fault. I remember years and years ago, I mean, when I was even before pre-business altogether, and I had some friends, my oldest friends staying, and they were farmer, or he was a farmer. They were newly married, and he came back to the dinner table or whatever, very excited. And he said, "I've just sold some cows, and that's great. We're off. We're made." And his wife went, "But we haven't got any cows." And that's what we
It
do, isn't
is.
it?
It is exactly what we do. It reminds me of a story of I read Chasing Monkeys about Silicon Valley, about
Mm,
there's a story, and I don't know if it's a fable, but it kind of defines it in that the son comes home and says, "Mom, I just made $1 million." And she, she said, "Oh, that's great. What'd you do?" And the boy says, "Well, um, I sold both of our cats. No, I sold our dog for $1 million and got two $500,000 cats." And she says, "Well, we don't have a dog." And he said, "Well, I don't have the cats yet either." So
Yep.
that's it.
But I've got cash
Yeah.
flow.
So it's not really good. And another thing I think we discovered is that the friction between, technicians and the engineers or the workers who's actually going to do the work versus the salespeople is oftentimes the sales makes all these promises of what they're going to deliver, throws it over the wall, and then, all of a sudden the people who have to implement it is like, what have you done? And so some natural friction happens that way as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you had that too, because I had that very much from, everybody worked on the factory floor. We was all under too much pressure and we were doing too well, and the sales people were going, yippee, we've taken another one.
Absolutely. Well, Jan Cavelle, what an absolute pleasure. I was so excited when I found out we were going to talk. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to one day having a cup of tea of sitting face to face. That would be wonderful.
Oh, that would
That'd
be
be absolutely.
gorgeous. Yeah, lovely. I would
So
love
please
that.
tell us how we can get in touch with you, how we can get your book.
Right, okay. You can come to my website, which is jolly easy to remember because I'm just jancavell.co.uk. And the book, Scale for Success, is available from Amazon and all the normals, or indeed through Bloomsbury Direct. And as I say, Start for Success, its friend, much updated, will be out in January and will be available for pre-order just into the new year from Amazon again and all the normal places. And if you go to my website, you'll get totally updated, and you can probably even get yourself an invitation to the launch party.
It's a great website. You've got a lot of great content, interviews. By the way, everyone, Cavelle is spelled Cavelle. And it'll be in the show notes. You're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram, Linktree. I'll put all those up in the show notes. Jan, thank you so much for your time today.
My absolute pleasure. I've loved every
Thanks
minute.
again. You be well. Cheers.
Thank you, Andrew. You.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.